The bowl slipped from his hands before he even realized his fingers had gone numb, shattering against the tile in an explosion of gravy and ceramic. Everyone at the table jerked their heads at the same time, eyes locking on him as though he had just committed a crime instead of dropping a bowl. The room froze. Forks hovered midair. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the TV in the living room seemed to lower its volume, and before he could even mutter an apology, her voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Oh, wow," his sister Melissa said, leaning back in her chair with a smirk. "Careful, big bro, don't drop it like you dropped your career." A few people chuckled under their breath, unsure if they were allowed to laugh, but doing it anyway because Melissa always set the tone at family gatherings. He bent down to pick up the pieces, hands trembling, but not from the bowl, from the humiliation. He could feel the heat rising up his neck. He heard his aunt whisper, "Why would she say that right now?" And another voice respond, "Because it's true." He swallowed hard. "It was an accident," he said quietly, but Melissa was already shaking her head, brushing him off with that same condescending smile she always used. "At 40 years old," she said loudly, making sure everyone heard every syllable. "And you're still working at Taco Bell. You really shouldn't be carrying anything breakable." He froze again. He heard it. His mother heard it. His cousins heard it. And Melissa didn't care. She wanted it to sting. She wanted it to echo in the quiet room like a slap. His mother tried to diffuse it with a soft, "Melissa, stop." But Melissa held up a hand. "No, I'm just being honest. It's embarrassing. 40 years old. Taco Bell. I mean, come on. At least pretend you're aiming higher." He stood fully upright, pieces of broken ceramic in his hands, and stared at her. "You don't have to say it like that," he said softly. Melissa raised her brows. "Why not? I mean, someone has to. You don't take hints." She placed one manicured hand on her chest, mocking sympathy. "I'm just worried you're going to be stuck there forever." He opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come out. Because the truth was, he had heard these jabs from her for years. Subtle, petty, cutting. "When are you going to get a real job? Still there? Are you sure management is the best you can do?" But tonight, she wasn't hiding behind fake smiles or playful sibling teasing. She wanted to embarrass him, in front of the whole family. On Thanksgiving, his cousin shook his head and murmured, "Damn, that's harsh." His uncle took a long sip of his beer, trying not to look involved. His mother rubbed her forehead, but nobody, not one person, told Melissa she was wrong. He set the broken pieces on the counter and took a steadying breath. He could feel his heartbeat pounding in his chest, louder than the room, louder than his thoughts. He told himself to calm down, to let it go, to avoid another blow-up that would become an inside joke next Christmas. But then he saw her roll her eyes, lean back, and whisper to her husband, "It's pathetic, completely pathetic." That was it. He walked back to the table slowly, each step feeling heavier than his entire shift handling lunch rushes. Melissa watched him with a raised brow, expecting him to apologize, to take it, to laugh it off. But instead, he reached for his backpack in the corner, the one he never left home without. "You need something," Melissa said, and the sarcasm in her voice felt like a slap. "You gonna show me a new taco recipe?" He unzipped the bag, ignoring her. His hands were shaking again, but this time not from embarrassment, from something deeper, something rising, something solid. "What are you doing?" his mother asked softly. He looked at her, then back at Melissa. "You want honesty?" he asked. "Fine, let me show you something." Melissa crossed her arms, ready to fire back another joke. "Oh, this should be good." He pulled out an envelope, thick, crisp, the kind that didn't come from fast food shifts. He placed it on the table, carefully, calmly, but the weight of it was louder than any words he had spoken all night. Melissa laughed. "What is that? Your Employee of the Month certificate? A coupon?" "Open it," he said. She hesitated, confused by the sudden shift in his tone. He had never sounded like that. Confident, firm, determined. She picked up the envelope lazily, still smirking, but the moment she pulled out the papers and saw the logo at the top, her entire expression cracked. Her smirk dropped, her brows lifted, her mouth opened slightly. She blinked once, twice, then again. What is this?" she whispered. He kept his voice steady. "It's my new corporate contract." Melissa looked back down, scanning the bold title. Regional Operations Corporate Management, Offer of Employment. Her eyes widened. Wait, this is real? It is, he said. She looked up sharply. You're moving to corporate? In 2 weeks. The room went silent again, but not the way it had earlier. This silence was heavy, shocked, respectful. His cousin whispered, "No way." His aunt gasped softly. His uncle muttered, "Damn. Good for him." And Melissa? She just stared, speechless for the first time in her life. He held her gaze. "You mocked me for working at Taco Bell at 40, he said. "But you didn't know what I was doing behind the scenes. You didn't know I was moving up. You didn't know I was already winning." Melissa opened her mouth, but nothing came out. He leaned in just slightly and said, "Everyone's path is different. And mine is winning." Melissa's fingers trembled as she held the contract, flipping through the pages like she expected it to disappear. Her voice came out thin, stripped of the confidence she usually wore like armor. "But you never said anything. You didn't tell us you were even applying for this. How did you?" He cut her off gently. "You didn't ask." His mother pressed a hand to her chest, tears gathering in her eyes. "Honey, you never told me." Her voice cracked as she said it, and he knew it wasn't anger, just shock mixed with pride she'd been waiting years to feel. "I wanted to wait until everything was finalized," he explained. "I didn't want to say something too early. I didn't want to jinx it, I guess." He exhaled slowly, eyes returning to Melissa. "And I didn't want to hear jokes about how I wouldn't get it." Melissa swallowed hard. I wasn't joking to hurt you. You were just being you," he said calmly. "And that's the part that hurts." She flinched at that. She had teased him countless times, but this time she couldn't hide behind, "I was just kidding." Not with the entire family watching, not with the truth laid bare in front of her like a mirror she wasn't prepared to look into. His cousin leaned forward, eyes wide. "Bro, you're really going corporate? Like full-on corporate?" "Yeah," he said. "Regional operations, salary, benefits, the whole thing." "No way," his cousin whispered. "You're going to be my rich cousin now?" He laughed softly, for the first time feeling some of the tension in his chest ease. "Let's not go that far, but it's a big step." Melissa's husband, who had stayed quiet the whole time, finally spoke. "Man, congratulations. Seriously, that's incredible." Melissa shot him a look, but even she couldn't deny how shaken she was. He took the contract back gently from her hands and placed it flat on the table. For a moment, nobody spoke. The air was thick, not with judgment this time, but with shifting power. People looked at him differently, like years of assumptions had suddenly crumbled. He cleared his throat and walked toward the kitchen for a cloth to wipe the spilled gravy. His mother stood up quickly and touched his arm. No, leave it, I'll get it." "It's fine, Mom," he said with a soft smile. "Let me clean up after my dramatic entrance." She laughed weakly and hugged him, whispering, "I'm proud of you, so proud." Oh, he returned the hug, feeling a warmth in her embrace he hadn't felt in a long time. When he walked back to the table with the cloth, Melissa was sitting stiffly, like she didn't know what to do with her hands, her face, or her ego. She looked at him with a mixture of guilt and confusion. "So, you're just going to pretend like everything's okay?" she asked quietly. He paused. The cloth rested in his hands. "I'm not pretending anything. But I'm not here to fight." She nodded slowly, biting her lip. I didn't know. I thought you were stuck. I thought you weren't trying." "I always try," he said simply. "You just never saw it." His cousin stood and clapped him on the back. "Yo, the glow-up is real. Next Thanksgiving, you better pull up in a suit." Everyone chuckled, and even he cracked a smile. He didn't want the moment to feel like he was punishing Melissa. He just wanted her to understand, to stop underestimating him. But Melissa wasn't laughing. She stared at her plate, her voice barely audible. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, not raising her eyes. He hesitated. "Because every time I tried talking about my goals, you found a way to turn it into a joke. I'm not mad at you. I'm just tired." She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. "I didn't realize I was doing that much damage." He shrugged. His family talked about work, kids, travel, movies, anything but the contract. But every few minutes, someone would glance his way with a new kind of respect. He caught Melissa watching him quietly, eyes soft, as though she were seeing him clearly for the first time. He looked back down at his plate and took a deep breath. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not for what he did, but for who he was and what he was capable of. And the night wasn't even close to being over. He didn't expect the night to become heavier again, but it did the moment dinner wrapped up. As people stood and drifted into the living room, Melissa followed him quietly into the kitchen. She looked smaller than usual, almost unsure of her own steps. He rinsed the last dish in silence until she finally spoke. "Can we talk?" she asked. He dried his hands and turned to her. "We are talking." She shook her head. "No, I mean, talk. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed gently. "All right, say what you need to say." She looked down at her feet for a moment, then lifted her eyes to his. "I was jealous." He blinked. That wasn't the sentence he expected. "Jealous? Of me?" "Yes," she said, nodding. "All these years I thought you were staying in the same place, stuck, not progressing. But you still walked around with peace. Every time I saw you, you looked calm, stable. I was chasing everything and still never felt that. And I hated that you had something I couldn't explain." He stared at her, unable to speak at first. "You mocked me because you were jealous of me working at Taco Bell?" She covered her face with her hand. "That sounds stupid when you say it like that." She let her hand fall, sighing. "But yeah, I guess I did. You didn't brag. You didn't compare. You didn't make anyone feel small. And Her voice trailed off. "I made you feel like garbage to make myself feel better." He exhaled slowly. "You didn't need to do that." "I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry." She stepped closer. "Not the quick sorry I said at the table. I mean this one." He nodded slowly. It wasn't anger he felt. It was release. "Thank you." She hesitated. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Go ahead." "When did you actually start trying to move up? Like really trying?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Honestly, the night after last Thanksgiving." She frowned. "Why?" "You remember what you said," he replied. "You told me I was wasting my life, that I had no ambition, that I was just comfortable being average." Her eyes softened. "So you got motivated because of me?" "No," he said honestly. "I got motivated because I realized how little you saw me, and how little I let myself believe I could be more. That night, I decided I was done letting people, family or not, define what my future should look like." She held her breath, watching him. "I didn't know I mattered that much." "You did," he said, "but not in the way you think. Your words hurt, but they didn't break me. They reminded me I had something to prove. To myself." She leaned against the opposite counter. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you," he said. And for the first time in their adult lives, the words didn't feel like a performance. Just then, their mother walked into the kitchen with a worried expression. "Are you two okay? You look like you're having a serious conversation." "We're good, Mom," he said with a soft smile. "Really?" Melissa nodded. "We're fixing some things." Their mother sighed with relief. "Good, it's time." She reached out and squeezed both their hands before walking back out. He and Melissa stepped into the living room where the rest of the family was gathered. His uncle was telling a loud story about something that happened at work. Cousins were laughing, and someone had switched on a football game. It felt almost normal, but now people kept giving him proud nods and warm smiles. His little niece jumped onto the couch next to him. "Uncle," she whispered loudly, "Mommy said you're going to be a big boss now." He chuckled. "Your mommy talks too much." She gasped dramatically. "I'll tell her you said that." "No, you won't," he whispered back, making her giggle. While the family settled into dessert, his cousin, the one who always bragged about his job, sat next to him with a grin. "So, when are you taking us out? You know the rule, first corporate paycheck, you buy everyone's suya." He laughed. "We'll see." No, we'll see," his cousin insisted. "You're fancy now." He rolled his eyes. "Not fancy, just better positioned." His cousin raised a brow. "Same thing." Across the room, Melissa watched him from the other sofa. He saw something new in her face. Not envy, not superiority, just recognition. She stood and walked over. "Can we talk one more time?" she asked. He nodded and followed her toward the hallway where the voices dimmed. She took a breath. I'm proud of you, really, but I also want to be honest with you now that the shock has settled. She looked him in the eye. I'm scared. Scared of what? Scared that I pushed you away so much that you don't see me as a sister anymore. He swallowed. I won't lie. This year, it created distance. I know, she whispered, and tonight I felt like I lost you. You didn't, he said, but things will have to change, on both sides. She nodded quickly. I can do that. He gave her a small smile. Then we'll be fine. They returned to the living room together. The atmosphere was warmer, lighter. Melissa grabbed a plate of dessert and plopped down next to him, handing him a slice before even taking her own. You're eating this, she said. It's my apology pie. That's not a thing, he said, laughing. It is now, she insisted, nudging him. He took a bite, and she grinned like she had just done something monumental. The family kept laughing and talking, and for the first time ever, he didn't feel like the outsider sitting at the table. He felt like he belonged there. Not because he had something to prove, but because he had finally proven something to himself. As the night drew on, people began packing their bags. Jackets went on, hugs were exchanged, leftovers were wrapped. Melissa stood at the doorway with him as everyone filtered out. She leaned close and whispered, You really showed me today. He looked at her. It wasn't about showing you. I know, she said with a small smile, but you still showed me. He watched the last guest leave, the house finally quiet again. His mother touched his cheek gently. You grew up today, she whispered. Maybe, he said softly, but deep down, he knew something else had happened. He wasn't the man they used to know, and he would never be that man again. He drove home that night with the windows slightly down, the cold air brushing his face and keeping him grounded. The house lights faded behind him, but the weight of the day stayed warm in his chest. He replayed everything, Melissa's insults, the shock on her face, the pride in his mother's voice, the way the room shifted the moment he put the contract on the table. He hadn't expected any of it to unfold the way it did, but maybe it needed to. The road stretched in front of him, streetlights flickering across the windshield. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel the heaviness of being underestimated. He felt free. He felt like someone who finally stepped into the version of himself he always believed he could be. When he got home, he set the contract on his kitchen counter and stared at it. He remembered the long nights studying, the early mornings, the days when exhaustion almost convinced him to quit. He remembered telling himself, just one more step, just one more module. He remembered doing it silently, with nobody cheering him on, nobody checking on him, nobody believing it would lead anywhere. And now here it was, proof that the quiet grind mattered, proof that moving slow didn't mean never moving. His phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. I'm proud of you, big bro. Really proud, and I'm going to work on myself. I promise. He read it twice before replying. Thank you, and we'll be okay. One step at a time. He set the phone down with a small smile. Maybe things wouldn't be perfect overnight, but they didn't need to be. Growth wasn't instant. Healing wasn't instant, but at least they had started. He walked into his bedroom, changed into something comfortable, and sat on the edge of the bed. There was no noise in the house, no judgment, no pressure, just silence. Peaceful this time, not lonely. He thought of the long road ahead, the new job, the new responsibilities, the new version of himself he was stepping into. He wasn't scared. He was ready, more ready than he had ever been. Before turning off the lights, he whispered into the quiet room, as if speaking to the old version of himself one last time. Everyone's path is different, and mine is winning. The next morning, he woke up earlier than usual. The sun wasn't fully out yet, but he felt energized. He brewed a cup of coffee, opened the blinds, and looked out at the quiet street. Today wasn't the first day of his corporate job, but it already felt like the first day of the rest of his life. He wasn't running from anything anymore. He wasn't proving anything to anyone but himself. He took a sip of coffee and let the warmth settle inside him. The world felt lighter, and he felt bigger than the small box his family had kept him in for years. As he sat at the table, he imagined telling this story to someone else who felt underestimated, overlooked, or stuck. Someone who needed hope the same way he once did. Someone who needed to hear that it's never too late to rise. And if this were a video, he'd end it the same way he ended that night. Honest, simple, and from the heart. If you've ever been underestimated, if someone has ever mocked where you are in life, let this story remind you that your path is yours alone, and your victory doesn't need anyone's permission. And if this story resonated with you,